This is Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show with Jenn Vogel. Join Jenn and her guests for this live discussion around topics that will help you understand your customers better. Also available on podcast channels, this live stream is presented to you by Vox Popme, the leader in video research. Here's today's live conversation.
Hello, insights professionals, marketers, everyone who's wanting to understand their customers better. I'm your host, Jenn Vogel, VP of Marketing at Vox Popme. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Real Talk, the Customer Insight Show. We are live on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and the podcast version will be available on all your favorite podcast channels. So, everyone on everything that we do in marketing takes time. Some experts have said when you estimate how long something should take your best guess and then double it. So we certainly all have plenty to do to move our business forward. And one of those key tasks is understanding our audiences. So who should own customer insights on a marketing team, and how do we integrate those insights into our marketing strategy? So that's the topic we'll be discussing today with Google Cloud CMO Eva Tsai. Eva leads global marketing strategy to organize cloud marketing information and make it accessible and useful. Welcome, Eva.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jenn. Good morning.
So good to see you. You're joining me from a different location. I don't recognize where you are at the moment.
So sadly, I'm joining you from the tree house in my home. This is the quietest room in the house right now, just because I have two kids distance learning at home. My husband is also video conferencing in the main house. So this happened to be the one I can get some solitude and quiet for the next hour. I'm hoping that there's no gardeners or neighbors mowing the lawn in the next hour. So
I love that.
Fingers crossed.
I love that you're in the treehouse. That is so perfect for, all those working from home scenarios that we've been seeing. This is a new one for me. So I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. And, one question before we kind of really get started on the conversation, one question I like to ask all of our guests is, what do you think about when you hear the word customer?
Is when I think about it, it's really everything that comes to the people you need to be engaged with from the moment, actually even before the moment that become a known entity to you, all the way till the moment that they start to engage with you, going through the purchase journey, and then even after they become an actual customer, have been paying revenue to you, that you still have to continue to engage them. It's this entity you just have to know, probably even better than yourself, like the back of your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a key point, like the understanding them kind of before they become an actual customer, that they still are, an entity that you really, really, truly need to understand. So we're going to get into that a little bit. I do want to dig into how you understand your customers. But first, I'd love to hear an overview of how your marketing team is structured within Google Cloud. I think, this is something I'm always really interested in, hearing how other marketers are structuring their teams.
So the way I think about it is that there are different setups between startups and large distributed companies. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've been working for 20 plus years, both for Fortune 500 companies and for startups. So for Fortune 500 company, I work at one point for Citrix while it was on a journey to increase its revenue from 2 billion to 5 billion. And at the moment at Google Cloud, when I joined, that was an 8 billion run rate business. Now we are at 13 billion. Yet prior to Google Cloud, I spent 6 years in the startup world, being a CMO for two companies from pre-revenue, 20 people all the way to 300 people, 350 in the end, and then pre-revenue to about 50 million in ARR. So the way I think about, how do you structure your marketing team is really important to be stage appropriate, knowing where you are. Typically for a startup, that I see that marketing team tend to be more centralized, tend to be more horizontal. And then it's very similar to the larger company, but then the key differentiator is that it tends to be more centralized. So you will have product marketing, you have demand gen, really critical nowadays. And then you also have some corporate marketing or brand marketing function. So in the startup, they tend to be, centrally run and then horizontal run, covering worldwide, or whatever the geolocations that your company will cover. But when you get to a much larger company, that the emphasis was gradually shift a lot more onto the regional side. So for Google Cloud, not only do we have a central teams, we also have regional teams. So every region we treat it is almost like its autonomous unit, so that the region can work agilely, work with the sales team regionally to how to best react, how to do the most locally appropriate content marketing or whatever demand gen tactics that will be. So from there, this is really where the difference is, that you get to not only centrally horizontal run, that at the Google Cloud, this scale, you start to see the vertical regionalized marketing teams.
Yeah, that's really interesting how, as you build these kind of larger teams and are more regionally focused, you said something about aligning with the local sales teams, and that's such like a key point, closely, tightly aligned with sales, and kind of structuring our team in a way that allows you to do that is really important.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so you mentioned a couple of different roles. Obviously, we're familiar with demand gen roles and product marketing, content, brand. So who's responsible for understanding the customer?
I hate to say this may come across a cliche, but in my mind, it's really everybody. In fact, I don't see in the world that how anybody does not understand customer insights and customer, information anymore. It just doesn't work in this digitally transformation age. So everybody, and then the way I think about it is that when you think about brand that I talk about, really need to understand the mind share, the customer references, and then talk to the customer, come up with the customer success stories, and then whatever image that you put on there, it has to reflect the customer insights, where they are going, where they are hanging out, what magazines they are reading, what radio shows they are listening to. So you need to listen to the customer insights in order to do really on point brand marketing. On the product marketing side, the way I think about product marketing is really to work closely with the product team to figure out how are you going to position your product. So it's like, why would anybody want to buy your product? What are they buying? And who are your buyers, the personas, industries, and then coming up with what kind of solutions that that's going to be most appealing to your customers. So with that, you definitely need the customer insights. Otherwise, how are you going to come up with the positioning? With demand gen, the way it is too, that you will have to source demand, acquire revenue, and then afterwards figure out not only do you land that account, but you also need to expand. So then you can come up with additional way to really get the customer to use your product, and then cross-sell and upsell. So with that, demand gen really has to work closely with sales, with partners and customer success team to figure out like how are the ways to actually not only to hook them initially, but also expand them as they go.
Yeah, that's really interesting that, it is so true that it's everyone's responsibility to better understand customers. And maybe there's different elements that are important to different roles in terms of what customer behavior you're looking at, or, what channels they're interacting with online, or what their jobs to be done are. Like, everyone might have a slightly different role in what they're trying to understand about the customer. But it's really shifted a lot in the last several years that everyone has to have a hand in it. It's no longer someone else's job to understand the customer. It really is has to be ingrained into everyone's day to day.
Yes.
And so, you talked a little bit about how some of those roles can get started with capturing some of that customer insight. And, I'm interested in digging a little deeper in that, but also like what sort of collaboration is happening with some other areas of the business to capture those insights. So you talked a little bit about being connected with sales and partners and customer success, but what about some of the other divisions in the company or even people who are fully responsible for insights and the collaboration, the role that marketing has in collaborating with those other departments?
Yeah, really. When I talk about everybody, indeed, is everybody I can think of. So everybody that's actually, doing any function at all at Google has this responsibility to be customer centric. So we work closely with our finance team to really figure out, how customers using buying our product, and from there figure out how we're going to do the proper financial modeling. And then another team that I work closely with, I call them oftentimes my partner in crime, is our cloud systems team. So the systems team that's actually responsible for all the back-end database and all that. Interesting enough that in almost every single of the Fortune 500 company I've been to, that the push to actually consolidate database so you have this centralized signal database is actually a primary focus. And the way I think about it is that when companies are scaling so fast and growing so fast, oftentimes we do what's easy. So we'll have this whole purpose-built and isolated database and just hack it, right? So you never know whether it's going to work, so you experiment with it. So as a company is actually growing a whole lot, very successful, and then interacting with the customers, getting tons and tons of signals from the customer, it inevitably come to the point that companies realize that in order for them to get to the next stage, they need to actually consolidate all the databases, reconcile them, so that they have this whole source of truth for customers and account hierarchy, and what the customer is doing, how they're engaging with Google Cloud or Citrix, everywhere you can think of. So, and for some of the bigger companies, that some of the issues really comes from acquisitions. So companies grow really fast and they acquire companies. And then so when you acquire a company, there's also this whole set of the back-end data that comes with it. So in a lot of situations that it cannot be underemphasized, really, that you just have to figure out how do you have a centralized systems team to actually piece together all this information that's so relevant, so crucial to, after all, data is going to be the new thing. Whoever controls the data is the one that actually has the most insight and then can really engage with the customers most intimately.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking about all the different data sources, like even I'm getting overwhelmed. There's so much data that we have access to, and really crucial to be able to turn that data into insights, as you mentioned. Like there's just so much out there, and having somebody that owns that and that you can tap into is really crucial. So, I guess leading off from that, idea of all this data we have, and marketing teams, we're looking for more results. And do you feel like marketing teams are taking full advantage of really understanding customers and tapping into that customer insight?
I do have to say that from what I have seen, indeed, that marketing is getting a whole lot more data-driven and quantitative over the past 5 to 10 years. Interestingly enough, though, that when I was at Citrix, I was really spearheading this whole analytics-driven marketing, just making sure that we tap into our data and signals to get into the insights we have on the customer. And what I found out, which I didn't expect, was that it was relatively easy to convince sales to come on to this whole data-driven approach, because after all, sales is all about number-driven, right? Mm. They think about their quotas, they think about how, their compensation, that's all they think about, numbers. So as soon as you actually have numbers that's going to help them increase their deal size, increase their deal velocity, they was like, you know what, whatever you're doing, go do more of those voodoo math. I will shift my budget over to your team, do more of that magic, whatever it is that will help me. Yeah. What I did not expect was that it took me longer to actually convince the marketers to go on this whole data-driven marketing. And then specifically, what I was doing at Citrix was that I was shifting the lead scoring from I call art onto the science model. So then, a lot of marketers, they have gone through years and years of doing marketing. So they have so-called tribal knowledge in terms of what are the best prospects that they should focus on. Yet I try to, look at the data, analyze millions of with art insights, but also the scientific insight to build the lead scoring. Additionally, also looking into our data and try to analyze the top personas, 5 of them that actually would make up 80 to 90% of all the revenue that Citrix would ever generate. And this is out of hundreds and hundreds of the personas who were, focusing at that time. And then finally, another thing I was doing is really to look at the content journey, to map out the user's journey in terms of the different personas, what are the way they consume content, how do you go through the journey. From there, score all our offering, all the content offering we have at the time, and try to see, do we actually need to double down on middle of the journey or the bottom of the journey or the top of the journey. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that's actually true to how the marketer will do their job. And then, try to actually change the behavior and change the thinking in terms of how a marketer will do their job, not only based on the tribal knowledge and years of the experience they have accumulated, but also look at the data to complement their thinking. It actually was a much longer journey than I originally anticipated. Yeah. But I have to say that in the past 5 easier and easier, marketers are starting to recognize the need for data-driven marketing, but still, compared to sales, was just a longer journey for me. Yeah, that's so interesting how, some, maybe it's personality, but that different roles are kind of leaning more towards quantitative versus qualitative. And you kind of have to bring both groups into the middle, right? Because like when I think about our own approach to customer insights, there is such an important balance that's needed of that qualitative and tribal knowledge, as you mentioned, mixed with the hard numbers and the user experience and the behavior data. And, it goes the other way too. Like, we have so much access to this quantitative data. It's easy to rely on that. But it's only one piece of the puzzle. So it's funny, like different people you have to kind of bring into the middle in some ways. Yes, indeed. So interesting. So, let's say you're, leading a marketing team, you want to improve customer centricity in your marketing. What role do you think marketing can own in customer insights? Really, that every way possible, as we talk about that, everybody in marketing and frankly, everybody in the company should actually think about, how can you tap into the customer insights to make your job better. And so aside from all the things I talk about in terms of everybody, brand marketing, product marketing, as well as demand gen, another thing I actually wanted to talk about is this whole concept of revenue ops. So when I started 5 or 10 years ago, that I think, not 5, but the past 5 to 10 years, I think that you started to see this whole emerging discipline of marketing ops. That's actually the marketers that really look into all the marketing automation, the technology, the back end, to how to gather the data, foundation, insights. And then what I really like to see in some of the new age companies is that they take a step further. That not only do they have marketing ops, but then they started to merge that role into revenue ops. So essentially, revenue ops is the one that's actually doing not only marketing ops, but also sales ops. So a combination of that. And to me, that's a great thing, because once you have a revenue ops, you are actually signaling to the company that the company insight is actually jointly owned by both sales, marketing, and every other revenue related, function there is. It's a company-wide initiative. So from the revenue ops, you actually build it from the go-to-market motion. You look into the financial modeling, how you're gonna make your numbers, and then on the marketing side, you really figure how the insights that your customers you can gather, and how do you build the different ways to engage your customers so as to actually push them along the buying journey. Yeah, again, kind of goes back to that importance of linking
what marketing's doing, what sales is doing, what customer success is doing. Like it's so crucial to have those groups joined up, and that revenue operation role can be really critical in bringing those together from a data perspective, and really understanding what's working from go to market and all of the tactics that we execute on a daily basis.
Yep. And another thing I wanted to add is that not only do we think about it from the internal perspective, like everybody and revenue ops, another thing that I'm particularly proud of working at Google is that we also think about this whole customer insights, customer centricity from the external basis. So Google is actually taking on this effort that we wanted our marketing to reflect the truly diverse user base that we serve every day. So there's a company-wide that's been going on to focus on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then with that, it actually really is infused throughout our marketing, in brand marketing, in terms of all the people we have on the images, all the advertisements, everything. Yeah, you can see our speakers in the events as well as customer success stories. The same thing too on the product marketing and then demand gen. And what I'm particularly proud of at Google is that they take a step further, that this whole emphasis on DEI is reflected in our considerations for vendor selection. So when we go out to actually select the vendors, we really wanted to see their DEI effort as well as scorecard. And we wanted to make sure that the people we partner with are the ones that will take this seriously. So not only internally do we do that, we do that externally for vendor evaluation. And also carry it all the way to performance, that we wanted to actually make sure that our managers and employees think about this as part of their performance evaluation. So it's indeed that everything you can think of, every facet, every single function is something we care about deeply.
Yeah, I could see that being really powerful in terms of, we talk a lot about when it comes to customer insight and customer understanding, like building empathy. And when it's really interesting to hear about that effort, as if you have a really, you certainly do have a very diverse set of buyers and customers. And so to have a team internally that reflects that, and vendors that reflect that, is going to build that empathy with, all of the types of customers that you might have, and just create a level of understanding and insight that you maybe couldn't get in another way.
Yeah. One thing I was actually particularly floored was that I read somewhere this whole article that at the early days of YouTube, they found out that a large percentage of the videos that uploaded to the YouTube site somehow, for some reason, were upside down. And they couldn't figure out what happened to it. Then they realized that those videos that were actually upside down were uploaded by people who were left-handed. So the YouTube engineering team at the time, they were particularly, all the product they designed were actually designed by right-handed people. And when you actually started to actually unleash it to the world, the left-handed people, when they do it, the videos were upside down. So it got me to think that there's really, the need for empathy, and then the people who are building the product need to truly reflect your user base, because there are always things you haven't thought about.
Yeah.
And the more diverse background that you have, the more robust your product is going to be.
That's incredible. I love that story. I had never heard that, but it's such a great illustration of what we're talking about here, and building that empathy and understanding for who your customers and users ultimately will be.
Yes.
That's great. Gathering insights, and obviously we've talked a lot about data, all the different data sources we have. That's all great, and that's one thing, but we also want to be able to use it to do what's best for our customers, deliver them the best kind of product experience, messaging, that sort of thing. So what skills do marketers need to learn in order to really turn that insight into something actionable?
I will have to say is really try to figure out how, you analyze data. How do you gather data, analyze data, trying to separate signals from the noise? There's so much data out there. And then how do you actually conduct very disciplined experiments so that you can not only formulate your hypotheses, but also put that into practice and continue to optimize along the way. And the way I was thinking about it is that on the development side, when I first started working, I started as engineer. So then, on the engineering side, that we have gone through this whole effort going from waterfall methodology onto agile methodology. So you just continue to, there's this big thing called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. So you actually fail fast, fail often, and then therefore you just keep on optimizing and then keep on experimenting. I see the same discipline, the same thinking applied to marketing as well, that instead of doing waterfall marketing, doing tons and tons of planning, you really agile. We never know what's out there, and you just have to isolate, trying to figure out different ways that you're going to experiment. And as you learn insights from your experiment, that how do you actually fork that and continue the journey to figure out additional experiments in order to gather insights along the way.
Yeah, I love that sort of test and learn approach. And you said it, I say it all the time to my team also, like fail quickly, like let's figure out that something doesn't work like really fast and move on to something that does work, because some of the best ideas do come from the bad ones.
Exactly.
But that test and learn approach is a really help you identify what's going to work and what's going to resonate with customers and give them a good experience really a lot more quickly.
Yeah. And somebody once said this to me, I still keep till this day, is that we all learn a lot from our success, but we learn so much more from our failures. Yeah. And I truly agree with that. When I think about what makes me the person I am career-wise and all the most valuable lessons, I actually think that a lot of them come from the failures, not just success.
Totally. Yeah, I think you probably learn a lot more from the things that didn't quite go well or mistakes that we've made. Exactly. That's where all the really good percent. So, how do marketing teams even get started with gathering and analyzing insights?
I would say that a lot of it is really think about the most structured way of thinking about your funnel, because marketers nowadays are so number driven, and then a lot of companies that they are starting to put marketers on the comp plan together with sales, because marketing source demand is such a huge part of your funnel. So with that, a good way to think about it is that how do you analyze the funnel from acquisition, from progression, to actual pipeline bookings, and then expansion. So just have to understand everything about the funnel, the stages, the conversion rate, the cycle, success and failures. So that's one, fundamental way to get started in terms of understanding how to analyze and gather the insights. Another way I think about it is too that in the past 5 years, there's starting to have this emphasis on not only thinking about top-down go-to-market motion, but bottom-up, which is a product-led growth. Mm-hmm. So, not only do we actually go through the traditional enterprise sales motion, that expecting our salespeople to always go wine and dine people, this whole concept in terms of how do you actually use your product as a true offering. And then, because people are used to interacting with whatever they want to do from the B2C side, like they, started to book the airline tickets themselves, Airbnb, everything. They're starting to do that on their own. So much they expect the same experience onto the B2B world. Mm-hmm. So the product should be the true offering. And think about once you actually get people to use your product in terms of whatever trials or offers you have, and then use that to actually go along the buyer journey. There's so much more insights you can gather from there, so much telemetry, right? The product usage and different triggers and how to instrument, so you can gather data along the way wherever you can think of, and then use that to experiment and optimize. So, the way I think about it is not start out with a funnel, and then also make sure that once you're comfortable with the funnel, look into the product-led growth side, and then mm-hmm. see how can you actually, tap into that, because truly, I think that's one of the most promising outlets and then promising tactics for marketing down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think aligning kind of your funnel and your kind of key core metrics for internally and how you're measuring success, aligning that with the customer journey and how your customers are measuring success at each of those stages. I know that's something that we've been focused a lot on, and really like mapping that customer journey and understanding our, the people we care about the most at each of those phases. And we've certainly been on a product-led growth journey as well, as you know. And it's interesting what you said about kind of expectations of us as consumers and how we interact with the world and how that translates into how we interact with business. And I had seen a video where the person was talking about, how we get Ubers and how we book Airbnbs, and we essentially summon what we need at the speed of thought. This is exactly like the quote. And I was like, that is exactly the expectation, is like, if I want something, I want to do it myself, and I will do it right now. And so offering your customers in a B2B space that same kind of experience does create another growth level and another channel for marketers that's really powerful, and another source for behavioral insight that we maybe didn't have before in a top-down model.
Yes. Yeah, one of the ways I think about it in terms of the product-led growth is that, instead of pleading for your prospect to take a meeting of half an hour with you, if the product can be easily downloaded or easily used in the cloud environment, and then it can be set up in 5 to 10 minutes, then the whole is shift the entire game differently. That in the matter of the conversation, like even now we had talked for half an hour already, that probably in 5 minutes, a fraction of our whole podcast, they could have tried the product and figure out whether that this product is worth their time in terms of engaging, their effort and energy further.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an interesting shift, and things are just so much more accessible right now that, like, wouldn't you rather kind of spend 5 or 10 minutes discovering it for yourself than picking up the phone? And so in some cases, that is how some people want to interact. And I think that discovery often comes from all of the work that we've all been doing on understanding our customers and how they prefer to interact with us. And, it's all a very interesting evolution in customer centricity over the last several years.
Very much so.
Amazing. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming and talking to me for a little bit. You have really shared some interesting insights in how customer understanding and audience research can fit into a marketing team, especially, even large organization down to startups. I mean, your career and your experience, you've run the gamut. So I really appreciate your insight. I love hearing that, customer understanding is everyone's responsibility, and interacting with others in the business who have different data and different sources, different insights is only going to help kind of lift everyone up together. And so, really wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone for joining us. Please rate and review us on your favorite network. Don't forget to share the show with your friends and family. In the next episode, I am excited to be joined by Shep Hyken. So join us next week and we will talk